Hey, you guys, welcome to an episode of Tuesday Talk, the podcast. This is actually the very first episode where I am bringing on a guest to share space with us, you guys, because again, as I said in the episode last week, this podcast is about sharing perspectives and sharing life stories with people who have had a shift in perspective or a shift in mindset. And as we get to uncover more with other people about their stories, we can also learn some things as well. So without further ado, the very first guest on Tuesday Talk, the podcast, is Dr. Robin Bell, you guys. She is a powerhouse, okay? She's a retired veteran. She's the founder of a nonprofit organization called Rehabilitation, Reform, and Reentry Resources Incorporated, also known as R4. She's a professor at the American University teaching the introduction to criminology, and she's a published author, you guys. There's so much more that I can say, but I am going to allow her to speak and share her story because you guys just hang on to your seats because you are in for a treat. Dr. Bell, how are you today?
Hi, Kayla. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It is an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. So you do so much. You guys, reading her bio, her repertoire is extensive. Okay. So she has so many things that she does. And I love the way that she serves in her work. And so I'm going to let her tell you guys a little bit more about what she does. So Dr. Bell, can you, first, I want to go over what you answered and what are you most passionate about? I really love the answer that you gave. You spoke on being passionate about changing the lives of those most considered lost and last but not least, most undesirable. That word undesirable is so heavy. And I really want you to dig a little more into that. What does that passion look like for you?
Well, that passion looks like for me is assisting returning citizens. And I'm in the DMV. So returning citizens, they don't call them that all over the US, but they are men and women who've been to jail, prison, and then once they get out. I work a lot with juvenile lifers. And juvenile lifers are men, and I work specifically with men as juvenile lifers that were sentenced to 60 years to life in prison as juveniles.
Wow.
And once the Second Amendment Act was passed in 2018 in DC, that said that men, their brains don't fully develop until they're at least 26.
Wow.
So all of the teenagers that went to prison in DC, because DC is not a state, they all went to the feds. And those inmates, they're called inmates all over the country, but in DC we call them residents in the jail. But those inmates who went to prison as teenagers, they were brought back to DC if they had been model inmates, if they had been programming, not getting into trouble, and then their sentences were commuted. So working with those men, I'm not going to say it changed my perspective because I've just always had the willingness to work with people, as you said, Kayla, who I felt were last, lost, and the least desirable.
Yeah.
People that other people, most people didn't want to work with. So, and this all started when I was in the military. My last 5 years in the military, I served with the Army Corps of Engineers. Okay. In those 5 years, I traveled to 75 sites, which was all over the world. And I developed a consideration of other class to give to the Corps of Engineers, because the Corps of Engineers had the most discrimination cases than any other organization in Department of Defense. So I had a 3-star general, and he was like, then I was Master Sergeant Bell. I have so many titles, but I was Master Sergeant Bell.
We wear so many hats as women.
And he said, I want you to go to every site that we have in the Army Corps of Engineers, and I want you to facilitate classes on treating others with dignity and respect. Wow, so I did that. And the Corps of Engineers is made up of 98% white males. It was back then.
Okay.
So I worked with mostly the workers, the employers, not the supervisors and things of that nature. But when I wasn't traveling the world, I really didn't have much work to do back here in the States. So I was like a block and a half from the DC Superior Court. I went to Atlanta. I got certified as a mediator, and I would go to the DC Superior Court and I would volunteer and mediate. And while I was sitting in the court waiting on cases, I saw so many young Black men coming through the court system, and a lot of them had low-level drug offenses or just offenses that would not, it should not have sent them to prison for very, long sentences.
Yeah.
So while waiting on cases to mediate, and I just saw so many of this population come through, and most of the all of the young Black men that came through, they were either with their mother, their grandmother, a court-appointed attorney, which there's nothing wrong with that. But then you would see the white people come through with sort of the same crimes, but the young white men that came through, they would come through with their mother, their father, they would have high-powered attorneys.
Yes.
And the sentencing disparity was so much that I said, wow, when I retire from the military, I'm going back to school, I'm going to get my doctorate, and I'm going to help this population.
Wow.
I didn't know how I was going to help them. So I just didn't know, but
you just knew you had a heart for it.
I knew I had a heart for it. So my dissertation was on shared experiences of non-violent African-American males with drug addictions who recidivate.
Yes.
And I went back to Gretna. I'm from Gretna. And I did my research with the young men there. And that's how my first book, which is a quick read, was published. When I was interviewing those guys, they were so open. And I just could not, I just could not wrap my arms around how they were so lost. They just couldn't believe. They were like, somebody care enough about us to come back and think, write about how we feel or what's happening in our lives.
You were their voice.
Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. And they were very passionate about that. So I explained to them the dissertation process. They didn't really understand. So a couple of years after I defended, one of the guys that I researched, he went back to prison, and Gretna's a small town. Mama gives everybody my phone number. So he was back in jail, and he called and he said, "Hey, Robin, you know that book you wrote about us? Can you send it to me?" I was telling some of my cellies about it, and I was like, I didn't write a book. That was my dissertation.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't send you my dissertation. So once I got off the phone, I sit down, I took parts of my dissertation, and I wrote a book. Just for him. And but I ended up getting it published, and it did, really well. So yeah, that's where I am with that. And so after that, it just snowballed. I just continuously, I inserted myself anywhere that I could to help this population. I volunteered at the Alexandria Detention Center. I volunteered at the Juvenile Detention Center.
Yeah.
I partnered with the prison in Ohio because rehabilitation begins on the inside.
Yes.
Absolutely. Not
Stay
only
right there, Dr. Bell. You better speak on it.
Not only on the inside of your mind, but inside those prison walls, you have to want to change. You have to want to change. So, after volunteering, I used to volunteer for the DC Department of Corrections all the time. One of my friends, Tiffany and Kayla, hopefully one day you can have Tiff on your podcast. She's an attorney, she's a professor, and all of that. And I
Yes.
the guest lecture with her at Howard. And Terry, my husband, he used to say, Robin, you volunteering all the time. Are they ever gonna pay you? So this was just a passion of mine. And and so let me backtrack a little bit, okay?
Uh-huh.
Kayla, I know you mentioned that I do have a nonprofit. In
Yes.
2018, once I retired from the military, got my doctorate and all of that, I became a contractor in the intelligence community. So, I worked at the Pentagon. And
Yes.
in Intel, you have, and I do have the highest clearances in the land, and I still do, but you have to get a recertification like every 5 years on your clearances.
Mm-hmm.
And it had become so difficult. I still have my clearances, but they ask questions that, and I don't want to appear racist or anything, but they ask questions that pertains to almost every Black person that I know.
Wow.
Do
Wow.
you know anyone on drugs? Do you know anyone who's ever been to jail? Have you ever visited a jail or a prison? And so it had just gotten, it normally takes 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm sitting in my research for like 2 hours because I'm answering these questions and they're truthful. But the people that I'm talking to, they're like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anywho's, in 2018, I decided to step away from the Intel community. I stepped out on faith. I was making amazing, amazing money, but I knew in my heart that the work that God had put on my heart to do, and I always tell people I'm doing God's work.
Absolutely.
Yep. So I stepped away and I started the nonprofit, Rehabilitation, Reform, and Reentry Resources. But before that, in 2014, and when I get bored, I do, most people get bored, they may go skating or bowling or something.
Yeah.
If I get bored, I'll write a book, I'll start a company.
I agree. Like, what's the next thing that I could do, right?
Well, I am ready to do another book. But anywho, I started Bell Consulting Group. And with Bell Consulting Group right now, that was in 2014, I partner, my husband and I am the CEO, he's the president. We partnered with DC Department of Corrections. And with that partnership, DC is the first correction institution in the world that has this program.
Wow.
This program is called the Lead Up, Lead Out. DC starts working with their residents. Like I said, they don't call them inmates in DC.
Right.
They start working with their residents on the inside, and that's the lead up part, programming. They have college courses, and I'm also an inside out professor. And inside out training is, I went to California to narco prison, and there you train to go inside the jails and prisons. American University offers it, and Howard University offers it. And you take your students inside the jail, and the residents on the inside take the same class.
Wow.
But because of COVID, we don't do that anymore.
Okay.
So I used to go into the DC jail with the students, and they would take the same class. So, but now DC has, and it started in 2020, and they were juvenile lifers. They were our pilot programs, the ones that came out, and Department of Behavioral Health. They offered a grant, $1.2 million. And with this grant,
Jesus.
Bell Consulting Group was selected, and we paid the salary to any employer who will hire these returning citizens.
Wow.
So we still do that. So Bell Consulting Group, we partner with employers. We have Hilton, we have Humane Rescue Alliance, Burgers at Apollo. We have like 11 employers in DC, and they hire our guys first. When they come into the classroom, they take professional development training, and I have a staff that teach them things like, because like when I say juvenile lifers, 60 years to life. But now we have, other people that's been to prison maybe 5 years, 7 years, or whatever.
Mhm.
But a lot of them, they have lost the skills. Technology changed so quickly.
Yes.
Computer skills, we teach them digital. I don't teach them digital literacy because they ask me sometimes, Dr. Bell, you sure you never been to prison? I know how to use my phone better than you. So
Listen, technology is not everybody's strong suit, including myself. So
it is not mine, Kayla. So my staff teaches them digital literacy. We partner with Industrial Bank, who comes in, financial literacy. With that grant, we offer haircuts, we buy clothes, we
wow.
just all of these things, and we pay their salary. We have 2 different cohorts, and we pay their salary for 6 months. And then we have never had a participant that went with one of our employers that didn't want the job, that they didn't get hired. So
wow.
it is an amazing program. So that's what Bell Consulting Group does. So it is just it is just my passion to work with that population, and just first of all, it lowers the recidivism rate.
Yeah.
And it just shows them that somebody cares. I get emails, I get texts almost every day. Thank you, Dr. Bell. I was just thinking about you. I was just thinking about you and your team, what you did for me, how you helped change my life, shape my life. So yeah, it's very rewarding.
I could literally cry because this is, for one, it's just such beautiful work, right? And you said so much, like I want to unpack everything and I don't even know where to begin, because what I want to start with, like, I just think it's really special, for one, that God has placed such a heart within you for this population, because as you said, they are the undesirables. These men, they get sent off to prison for years, and often they are not just lost, but they're forgotten about. And, and when they get out, who do they turn to? Their families have either turned their backs on them or just completely written them off as, no good. And so what do? Without the knowledge and the information that you and your program and your staff have provided them with, usually, like you said, they'll get out from these long sentences, and then they'll end up doing the same things that got them put away the first time, because they have no other knowledge. They have no other way of life. They have no one. So your work truly gives these men a second chance at life. And I just want to stay right there for a second. It's just that the last episode that I discussed is that, we are all a people who needs someone. There's no one out here who is 100% self-made, because whether somebody said that one thing to you that changed your life versus giving you, allowed you to have an opportunity, it all came from someone. God places people in our lives for a reason.
Absolutely.
And so to be that person that these men need, just someone to simply care about them, and someone to believe in them, and to believe that, no, your life did not just end in prison, but there is still life after that. Because for as long as you wake up every day, there's still hope, there's still another chance, and people just need someone like that in their life to care about them. So whether it is, through the work that you do and in your program, or just a friend, someone who believes in them, relentlessly, that's what everybody needs.
That is true.
And I just want to also tap into where you said the work begins on the inside. People also have to want to change. We can want so much for other people that they don't want for themselves. Sometimes we want more for others than they want for themselves. Absolutely. So no matter how much we're willing to help, or how much, that passion is there for us, we ultimately have to, be with people who want that for themselves. They have to want to change. And this goes for, and this is where y'all got to listen up, y'all, my podcast listeners. But even whether you're in prison or not, I love how that applies to everyone. You have to want to change if you want to see different results in your life. It starts with you. It starts on the inside, and not just inside of the prison walls, but the prison walls for a lot of people who are free are, the prisons of their own mind.
Absolutely.
And that is why, this is why I do what I do, because, as a certified life and mindset coach, change begins within the mind first. There's no other change that can happen, because if your mind is still in the same place where you were years ago and you're not open, your mind is not open enough to receive the new, you're going to continue to be in the confines of your mind. You have a life sentence in your own mind, and you don't have to be imprisoned there, but you have to want to get out of it. You have to see the need for that change.
That is true.
This is just amazing work. This is phenomenal work. And you have given way more than I could have even imagined that you would have given. But to work with those who are lost and undesirable. Oh, one thing, I had no idea that you were a mediator for the DC Superior Court.
Yes, ma'am, I sure was.
And I know that, we were probably in there at two different times, but I also had the internship at the DC Superior Court where I had to work with, parents who were undergoing, custody battles or anything like that. It was under the supervised visitation program, but I did see so many again, majority Black couples or were once couples who have a child and are now undergoing a custody battle and things of that nature. So, but you do see a lot of men. I did see a lot of men who were oftentimes the non-custodial parent, the parent who didn't have custody, coming in with their mom or their grandmother to advocate for them on their behalf. Absolutely. And so I thought it was very interesting that you mentioned that, but I saw a lot of things. And I think that was also another portion of why I wanted to become a marriage and family counselor. When I was majoring in psychology in college, that was one of the biggest things. So that internship meant a lot to me, more than, they knew. Well, Dr. Bell, this was phenomenal. And I thank you for not only sharing your time, but, for sharing your heart, and sharing space, because that's what we do here on this podcast is we share space, because it's very vulnerable to, one, admit and communicate your passions, and because not everybody can understand. It's like you left a Pentagon job making tons of money, and to most people they will look at you like, are you crazy? Like, are you kidding me? But what they don't understand is when God has called you to serve, when God has called you to do something, it is truly the only person who can understand is between you and God. Absolutely. He gave you that vision, and to everyone else outside, it looks absolutely insane. It looks crazy. They're like, I don't know what you're doing, but I think you're making a big mistake.
but I didn't, and it just paid off tenfold. And Kayla, I want to say this, because this is one of the questions you asked was, what point in my life did the trajectory of my life change?
Yes. Right? What was the mindset shift? What changed for you?
What changed for me was, as I said, I was raised in Gretna, Virginia, a small town. I'm not going to say I was a hellion, but I was very defiant. Yeah. I was a teenage mother, and I always knew that Gretna was not big enough for me. For those who are still there, prospering, that is amazing. But I always knew that Gretna was not big enough for me, even as a teenager. And my dad used to always, he was very strict, and he was always fussing and getting on us. And at that time, I thought, he's just mean. But one day, my dad said something. It was harsh, but it was the truth. And at that moment, I knew that I wanted a better life for me and my son, who is the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. Yeah. Because if it wasn't for Keon, I would not have had the drive and determination that I had to leave Gretna and just do bigger and better things in life. So my father's harsh words changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. And if you guys remember on the last episode, that's actually one of the things I, wanted people to consider is like, like anyone with children, because I gave a couple of things for them to consider on the last episode, but anyone with children, like your children are not a hindrance. Rather, they are that extra strength and that extra drive that you didn't know you needed. And so much like with your son, with Keon, my biggest change, one of the biggest shifts for me was my daughter Zara. And I was always ambitious, that was always something that was just within me. But when she came, it just like the timer started ticking, and I was like, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to get this done because I have this little person who is looking up to me. Absolutely. And I need them to know and to see that anything is possible if you set your mind to it. The world is so big and so broad. There are so many connections. There are so many things that you can do, regardless of who's already doing them. There is something within you and within your heart that God will bring out of you to serve in your way. So yes, there are a million podcasts out here, but there is only one Kayla, and there's only one mind that God gave for me personally. Absolutely. There are so many people, and maybe not a lot of people, who may have the same desire as you to help, those who have been in prison, to help them reacclimate to society, Dr. Bell. But there is only one Dr. Bell who truly has this heart, this passion, and this desire to help people and serve them in the way that you do, in the way that is specific to you and to your call. Thank you. So I just want to thank you for your work, because if we're being honest, especially in the Black community, ultimately you are bringing home our fathers. Mm-hmm. You are bringing home our brothers. You're bringing home our cousins. You are bringing home the men, and men are such a vital part to the family picture. And somewhere along the way in generations, we have lost our men. Absolutely. And so for you to bring them back into society, to give them the tools that they need to begin thriving, and to give them hope again to reacclimate even with their families, or to begin new families, but in a healthier and more positive way. You are giving them the tools and the insight and the hope and the light that they need to be able to carry this out again. And your work is something that they will always remember, that they will never forget. Look at me talking on behalf of them, like I know what they've going through.
Look at you, Kayla.
But at the end of the day, I can understand the importance of, needing a male figure in every household, in every home. And, and that's something that I can appreciate with my husband. And when I chose my husband, it's like, this is I want a family unit. And as most people do, but things happen, and that's okay. But I appreciate my husband for his presence and for his ability to be a father in the way that he is, and to even be another leading example of, just what a man is supposed to, be like in the role that he plays in the family, because this is not something that I could do on my own.
Absolutely.
So I just, I'm just taken. I am taken, and I'm just really, my heart is really full with hearing not just what you do, but your passion for it and the shift in your mindset. And I thank your father for his harsh words. I know they probably hurt at the time, but
they stung, Kayla. They stung, but it was the truth, and it changed the trajectory of my life. And I will forever be grateful for him, and may he rest in peace. I know he is.
Yes, because whatever he said to you gave us, the Dr. Bell that is out here in the world slaying dragons for these men and the rest of the men that are to come. And that's why, we all need someone, because there is something within somebody that will unleash something in someone else and ultimately propel you into the purpose that God has for you to serve here on this earth in the first place.
Absolutely, Kayla. Very well said.
Thank you. Will you tell the people, which I will also have it in the show notes as well, but will you just tell the people where they can connect with you or follow you on social media, or, how can they reach out to you? Maybe someone knows someone who needs, some of your services or something that you said. Just tell the people how to connect with you.
Okay, so like I said, I am technically challenged, but I do have Facebook and I have a YouTube and I have LinkedIn. And but Kayla, I will send you all of that to put in the notes because
Absolutely.
I don't know all of those handles. Please forgive me. And I just hired a social media manager, but Kayla, I will send you all of those things and you can put it out there. Yeah, because I do want a more robust following. And I
Absolutely.
do want it to be out because this is amazing work.
It
Amazing.
is. It truly is amazing work. And I had no idea that DC even had, all of this. And for them to be the first, that's awesome.
And
That is
we're working
amazing.
on moving it to other states in the yeah, we're in talks now to moving it to several, just modeling what DC has. So yeah, we are.
It is needed. And I wish you, the greatest of successes in the rest of your work and in expanding because your work is needed, of course, not just in DC, but all over the world. And it's just necessary. It's very much necessary work. So I pray, the power and the force behind you that is needed to expand. And I pray that God sends you everyone needed to help you in cultivating this vision all throughout the United States and anywhere else that he sees fit for your program to serve. I wish you the best of luck, Dr. Bell.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
All right, you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. You can follow Dr. Bell with the links in the show notes. And I will talk to y'all next week.